All right, guys. So what we're looking at today is one of the biggest indicators that you can use when you are going to purchase a stock, and it's known as the P/E ratio. P/E ratio. It's right here. Okay. Now, if you look at this graph, what this is telling you is this is the P/E ratios down here. Okay, so as you go this way on the graph, okay, the P/E ratios are getting higher. So for example, this company right here has a higher P/E ratio than this company because it's further to the right. Okay, all right. Then, so as you go to the right, the P/E ratio gets larger. All right. Okay, now if you go up, this tells you the return on your investment. Okay, so this way is the return on your investment. So for example, if I took the company right here, let's say this company, this little dot, and I compared it to this dot, which one paid out more money? Which one did you get a bigger bang for your buck? The orange or the blue? What do you think, Dante? Yeah, the orange one paid because it paid a higher return. Okay, so this, like right here, that would be like maybe about a 12% return, like this dot right here. And then if I went down here, its P/E ratio might be something like 7. Okay, whereas if I went over here, this one has like a high P/E ratio. It's like 30. This company, well, its return was below 0. So you weren't getting any money on it. Okay, let's see. If we go to like maybe one about here. Okay, that might be like, I don't know, 23 maybe. And the amount that you got back on that was like maybe 2% return on your money. So if you had $100, it grew to 102. Whereas on this one, if you put $100, it grew to 112. So it's growing faster than the other ones. So when you look at the P/E ratio, you can kind of see that. What do you notice about the size of the P/E ratio and the amount of return that you get? What's the pattern here? Okay, so as the P/E ratio increases, as it gets higher, increases, what happens to the amount of return that you get on your investment? So as I go to the right, what happens to the amount of return that you get? What's going on? As the P/E ratio gets larger, is the return that you're getting larger or smaller? Not sure? Okay, so let's do it like this. If I picked a point right here that went with 10, okay, all right, so and then I went over here, let's say I went to that point right there, that company, I don't know the name of that company, I'm just going to say it's company A. Okay, it's got a P/E ratio of about 10, and it pays about 5% return. Right? Now, if I pick another company that's got a bigger P/E ratio, let's say one that's twice as big, like 20, say the return is lower, you see? So that one's got a P/E ratio of about 20, and you're getting about 3% return. Okay. So what we're seeing here, and this is just like a chart way from the 1900s all the way up to, well, this is still pretty old, up to 1985 of P/E ratios and how much money companies were paying back to people that own their stocks. So you can see as you start to get up here, a P/E ratio of like 20 to 30, you're not getting as much money back on your investment. So your return decreases. All right. So now some of that all depends on the sector of the economy that you're working with. Okay, but this is sort of overall. So what a P/E ratio measures. So what we're seeing right here is a high P/E ratio isn't necessarily a good thing, because you're kind of seeing that, well, when this gets bigger, this gets smaller. And if I'm an investor, I don't want my return to get smaller. I want my return to get larger. So it might be smart to look for companies that have a P/E ratio, like if I cut it off right there, most companies over here have a P/E ratio that's, 3 or higher. And if I pick P/E ratios that are about 10 or so, those companies all have higher returns. So one thing that you can do is when you look at a stock that you're interested in, you can look at the P/E ratio and kind of get an idea of, what's most likely return that I would get from a company that had these kind of values, P/E ratios. Okay, now what the P/E ratio actually is. Okay, so anytime you look at a stock, all right, you'll see the P/E ratio. Okay, so for example, here's Walmart. Okay, and the P/E ratio is right here. So right now, Walmart is at 29. Typically, anything larger than 20 is considered kind of high. Now, it depends on the sector. So Walmart is like a retailer. If you just looked like at tech companies, then a lot of 50 is considered a high PE. So this number changes based on the sector of the market that you're working in or that you're looking at. So when we look at PE ratios, you got to look at what you use them for. Is it gives you an idea how that company is doing for its sector. Okay, when I say sector, like if I was looking at just utility companies, well, that sector is or oil companies, that sector is the energy sector. If I was just looking at tech companies, Apple and Microsoft and Intel, that's a sector. So each sector has sort of their own benchmark for PE, and you can then use that to kind of compare one stock to another. The best way to think about PE is it's a stat that by itself doesn't mean a lot, but when you use it to compare things, that's where it's useful. Okay? One kind of analogy that really makes sense for PE is think it's similar to like if I told you, hey, I just bought a new car or I just bought a new vehicle. I didn't tell you what it was. I said, bought a new vehicle and it's getting 6.5 miles per gallon. Okay, well, 6.5 miles per gallon, you probably say, Krolak, you got yourself a gas guzzler. Okay, because you have an idea that 6.5 miles per gallon is not very good. All right, but then I pull up into the school parking lot and you're expecting me to be in a new vehicle and I'm in like a 45-foot motorhome. Okay, and the average gas mileage for a motorhome is like 5 miles per gallon. Well, then you could say, well, you got a pretty fuel efficient motorhome because it gets 6.5 miles per gallon. So that's what I mean by the PE ratio. If you didn't know what I was talking about, this number doesn't make much sense. Or you think you got yourself a car that burns a lot of gas. Well, it's not a car, it's a 45-foot motorhome with 5 bedrooms in it or something crazy, and a jacuzzi and a putting green. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, 6.5 miles per gallon, that's actually pretty good. So that's sort of what the PE ratio is, okay, or that's how it's used. So let's get into the actual specifics of it here, okay? So what the PE ratio is telling you, it's called the PE ratio because it stands for, the P is for the word price, okay, and the E is for the word earnings or profit. Okay, so we got price to earnings. All right, that's what the P and the E stands for. Okay, so it's probably one of the most widely used tools when you're determining if a stock is a good investment or not. Okay, so if we're trying to decide, hey, let's say I'm trying to decide if I want to invest in Target or in Walmart. Okay, those are similar companies. Target's a little bit smaller than Walmart, but they're similar. I could use the PE ratio to kind of get an idea of, well, which one might be a better deal. Okay, so the PE ratio, okay, is a good way to tell you if a stock, go ahead and underline this. It's a good way to tell you if a stock is overvalued, that means it's expensive for what you're getting, or if it's undervalued. Undervalued stock is what you're really looking for, okay? Because an undervalued stock is one that you can make a lot more money on because you're not paying more than you should for it. You're actually paying less. All right, now let's talk about what this actually means. All right, if a company had a PE ratio of 20, the way that you can think about it is investors, so the people that are putting money into this company, they're willing to pay $20 for a claim on $1 of the company's current earnings or profit. So if I had two companies and one had a PE of 20 and the other one had a PE of 15, which one is a better deal? PE of 20 or PE of 15? What do you think would be a better deal, Emily? Would if I was trying to decide between company A and company B, same type of company, one had a PE of 20 and the other one had a PE of 15, which one would you go with? Pardon me? The 20? Okay, so what that means is for every $20 you spend, you get $1 of profit from the company. A PE of 15 means for every $15 you spend, you get $1 of profit. So which one of those is a dollar do you spend less on to make $1? Emily? Confused? A little, okay. All right, so if we think of it this way, if a company had a PE, we were comparing two companies. One company has a PE of a rating of 20. Okay, so what that means is, this is you, okay? This is the investor. Investor pays, or I should say the investor is willing to pay $20, and what the investor gets $1 of profit from the company. So to earn $1, you're willing to spend $20. Okay. Now, if a company had a PE of 15, now you're willing to spend, now this is saying you spend $15 and you get $1 in profit from the company. So you're getting the same no matter what. You're getting $1 from company A, you're getting $1 for company B. One company you had to pay $20 to get that dollar, and another company you had to pay $15 to get that dollar. All right? So Serena, which one would be a better deal? Yeah. It's costing me less to get the same amount. It's like going into the grocery store and buying a steak. Well, I could pay $20 a pound, get a pound of meat, pay $15 a pound, get a pound of meat, but this one is going to be cheaper for the amount that I'm getting. Now, maybe this is a better tasting meat. It's a higher grade steak. Okay, it's $5 more, but this one is actually a better deal. Okay, so that's what a PE ratio is. Okay, the other way to think about a PE ratio, so underline this here, where it says a PE ratio means investors are willing to pay $20 for $1 of the company's earnings. Okay, so that's $1 of profit that you make on your stock. Okay, the other way to think about the PE ratio of 20 is it tells you that the current value of the company is 20 times how much the company is earning in a year. So if something had a PE ratio of 20, if you took its earnings and you multiplied it by 20, that's how much the company's valued. So if something had a PE ratio of 15, that means its value is going to be less than a PE ratio of 20, the company overall. So if we went back to our analogy here looking at Walmart, okay, so Walmart has a PE ratio of 29, so let's just say $30. Okay, so what that means is the market, people that are investing in stocks, are willing to pay $29 to have a claim on $1 of profit from Walmart. So you're paying $30 to have a right to $1 of Walmart profit. So you're paying a lot more than what you're getting. Okay. All right. Now let's compare that to Target. They're both kind of similar companies. All right. Walmart is obviously a lot bigger than Target. Okay. So if we did Target here, okay, come on, Target. Now, let's see, let's try this again. Target. Okay, so here's Target, and its PE value, where'd it go? Dang it. Target. Its PE ratio is 23. Okay, so if I was going to buy two stocks, all right, the one that is 23 is going to be cheaper for $1 profit than Walmart. So I might say, you know what, based on the PE value, this one I'm spending $23 to get it. So put my money in Target. You're going to get more bang for your buck out of Target than you would Walmart for what you're spending. Okay? So that's how you use the PE ratio. It's a good way to compare two companies. All right, so now let's just do the calculations. They're pretty straightforward. All right, so flip over here to the back. Okay, now, the other way that a PE ratio is used, before we actually figure it out, is a high PE ratio. What does that mean? Well, when we looked at that one chart, typically when a PE ratio was high, your return was lower. Okay? It also could be an indicator that the stock is overpriced. Okay? Now, on the good side, it could mean that investors are expecting this stock to really grow or to continue to grow in the future. So if you looked at a company like, let's say Apple. Apple's probably got a pretty high PE ratio. Let's see. Or what's a really fast-growing company right now? Apple, Netflix. Well, Apple's only at 36 for a PE ratio. It's not that high. Let's see. I don't know if Tesla has one because they might not have any earnings yet. Yeah, they're putting all their money back into the company. So they're not paying out, they're not making money, they're reinvesting all the money that they make. Okay, look at the PE ratio. It's 1,000. So investors are willing to pay $1,000 to get $1 of Tesla profit. So this company right now is probably really overvalued. You're not getting a lot for what you're putting in. However, people are banking that Tesla is going to go up and up and up and up. So they're willing to pay more to get a piece of the action than, let's say, if you were buying Walmart or Target or Ford, a company like that. All right, let's see what General Motors, what theirs is compared to Tesla. So that's 1,000. So right now I'd say, okay, that company's over. So look at General Motors. Investors are willing to pay $13 to get $1 of General Motors stock. Okay, so that's the way to compare the two companies. So if I was investing, I'd probably invest in General Motors. I'd probably get a better return because think about this chart here. The smaller the PE, the better the return. The higher the PE, the lower the return. So all that means for Tesla is people are really banking on Tesla's future. Okay, that Tesla is going to be a very wealthy company coming in the future. Okay. All right. Now, when something has when something has a low PE ratio, so low PE, all right, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay. All right. It could mean that the company is undervalued. People don't realize, hey, this company is a good deal. So it's kind of hidden. That could be a company. So if you can find an undervalued stock, that's a good thing. So low PE and high PEs aren't necessarily good or bad. It's just telling you something different about the company. All right. Another thing that could be true is that the company is doing very good relative to its past. So let's say in the past it wasn't growing much and now it's doing really, really well. It would have a low price to earnings, and that would be a great stock to invest in. Okay. All right. So the way that we're going to use it is you're going to use it to figure out how much earnings per share a company makes. And then you're going to use it to figure out, is the stock that you're looking at, is it overpriced or is it underpriced or is it just about right? Okay, are you getting a good deal for the money that you're spending? All right. So to do that, so let's say we took Costco here. Okay, we want to figure out the earnings per share. All right. So to do the earnings per share, all right, we had a formula for that when we did the stuff on stocks. It was right here. This is our formula for earnings per share. You take the last share price and you divide it by the PE ratio. Okay. So the earnings per share for Costco, we're going to take the latest price and we're going to divide it by its PE ratio. All right, so Costco. So the EPS for Costco is going to equal, let's see, it's closed at 171.60 and its PE ratio is 20.48. So if we took that and divided it out, 171.60 divided by 20.48. Okay, 837.8. 8.38 when I round it. So for what this means, for every share you're making, for every share that you buy, that's the amount of profit per share. So profit is $8.38 per share. So if you had 100 shares, then your profit would be $838. Okay, now what we want to do is decide, is Costco a good deal? Right. So what you do is you look at where Costco's been in the past. So in the past, Costco has been having a PE ratio between 12 and 14. It now has a PE ratio of 20. Okay? So if you look right here, if a stock's PE ratio is greater than its historical average, so 20.48 is greater than 12 to 14. That tells you that at this moment, Costco is probably overpriced. You're paying more than what you're getting. You want to try to avoid overpriced stocks. Now, at the same time, an overpriced stock could mean, hey, people got a lot of faith that Costco is really going to explode in the next few years. I don't know about that. A company like Tesla, perhaps. Okay. All right, let's do General Motors. Okay, or General Mills. So its EPS is going to be, it's $52 a share. Okay, its PE ratio is 16.14. Now if I do that, 52.65 divided by 16.14, $3.26. And that would be profit per share. Okay. Now, if we were, is it overpriced, underpriced, or just right? Well, 16.14 is greater than 12 to 14. All right, so this PE ratio compared to this PE ratio, it's higher. So General Mills is slightly overpriced. Okay, so far, all the stocks we've looked at are slightly overpriced. If I was looking for a valued stock, I'm looking for one that's underpriced. All right, so let's see. IBM, okay, its earnings per share, $151.98, $12.49. Okay, 151.98 divided by $12.49. Okay, it's got a PE ratio of 12.17, or an earnings per share of 12.17. Okay, so this is profit per share. Okay. All right. Now, if we look at where it's at, its PE ratio right now is 12.49. Okay? And if I compare that, that's right, that's between 12 and 14. It's not bigger. So this one is priced about right. So IBM would be a smart purchase. You're not paying more than what you're getting. Right now, for Costco and General Mills, you're paying a little bit more than what you're getting for it. Now, what do you think about Alphabet, Google? They own Google. Do you think they're going to be overpriced or underpriced, or just about right? What would you think about Google? What would your intuition tell you? Yeah, probably. Look at its PE ratio. It's already at 30. Some things that are generally over 20 are considered overpriced. All right, so if I was doing this one, let's see, its earnings per share is 954.65 divided by 30, 77. Okay, so 954.65 0.65 divided by 30.77. So you're making more money per share. You're making $31.03 profit per share. Well, you're like, well, Krolak, I'm making more money. Well, you're also paying $900 to get $31 in profit. Okay, here I'm paying $151 to get $12 in profit, $52 to get $3 in profit, and $171 to get $8 in profit. Okay. All right, and then if we looked at this, its PE is 30. Now again, this is a tech company, so we really should be using a higher PE ratio to compare it, but that's way above 12 to 14. So we would say right now this stock is overvalued. Now, just for argument's sake, we were using 12 to 14. For technology stocks, you might use a PE of like 50. And then that would mean that, well, for technology companies, Apple or Alphabet is not overpriced. So you always want to use the PE average for the sector of the business that you're looking at. Okay? So this 12 to 14, we did it just to make things simple on these problems. This number would change based on, General Mills, what do they make? Cereal and food and dog food and stuff like that. IBM is business machines, copiers, computers, etc. Okay? All right, guys, so that takes care of PE ratios.